Alright, part 2. And you can see your homework from part 1 still there. Okay, the last thing that happens with completing the square, you might notice that all the problems I've done so far and all the problems I gave you for homework, the leading coefficient was the number 1. And that always has to happen. In order for completing the square to work, the leading coefficient must be the number 1. Well, of course, that begs the question, what if it isn't 1? So, what if I asked you to solve 2x squared plus 6x minus 10 equals 0? Well, this one's not really that big a deal. Like I say, this leading coefficient has to be 1. It isn't, but we can fix that. We divide by 2. And of course, when you divide by 2, you have to do it everywhere. So that's going to give us x squared plus 3x minus 5 equals 0. So that's what you're going to have to do. If that leading coefficient is not the number 1, you have to divide through by that leading coefficient. Now, we complete the square just like we did on all the other problems. We move the 5 over. We find the magic number that we have to add, and in this case we see we're going to have to deal with fractions a little bit. We take the number in the middle, the 3, we divide it by 2, and we square it. That gives us 9/4. So we add 9/4 to both sides. X squared plus 3x plus 9/4 equals 5 plus 9/4. Now, once again, this left-hand side should factor as a perfect square. It's going to be x plus, and once again, it's always this number that you had right before you did the squaring, 3/2. And over here, I'm going to think of 5 as being 5 over 1, and then I'm going to get a common denominator. So the common denominator is going to be 4, which means that becomes a 20. I got to multiply top and bottom by 4. So that becomes 29 over 4 there. I square root both sides. X plus 3/2 is plus or minus the square root of 29 over 4. I write my final answer. X equals negative 3/2 plus or minus the square root of 29 over 2. Square root of 4 down on bottom is a nice number, that's 2. And once again, you could leave your answer just like that, but quite often you see it written this way. Since those have a common denominator, we write it as one fraction. Okay, so that one was a little bit easier. Last problem, I'm going to give you one that's a little harder. What can make these hard is when you have to do the division of the leading coefficient. And what I mean by that, here I had to divide by 2, and when I divided by 2, that didn't give me any fractions in any of these other places. Unfortunately, that can happen. So let me show you what I mean. Let's say I asked you to solve 3x squared minus 5x minus 8 equals 0. Well, once again, the first thing I notice is this leading coefficient is not the number 1. It needs to be. So I have to divide everything by 3. And you can see where this is going to get kind of gruesome. We're going to have x squared minus 5/3 x minus 8/3 equals 0. Well, the next step is easy. The next step is move the 8/3 over. X squared minus 5/3 x equals 8/3. All right, now our magic number. We're going to mess with fractions here. We're going to take minus 5/3. We have to divide it by 2 and then square it. And the way to do that is to think of 2 as being a fraction. Think of 2 as being 2 over 1. So we flip and multiply. We're going to have minus 5/3 times 1/2. And then we're going to have to square that. So that's minus 5 over 6 squared. That's 25 over 36. Okay, so you see what you have to do there? Of course, there's absolutely nothing preventing you from using your calculator for this. Absolutely no reason why you couldn't take 5/3 and divide it by 2 on your calculator and then square. If that's what you want to do, wonderful. All right, so there's our magic number this time. So we're going to have x squared minus 5/3 x plus 25 over 36 equals 8/3 plus 25 over 36. Again, the left-hand side should now factor, and it's x, and then it's this number that's inside the brackets here right before we squared, so it's x minus 5/6 equals, over here, again, I want to add my fractions. I got to get a common denominator. The common denominator is 36, which means I need to take 18 times 12. I'm sorry, I got to take 12 times 8, which is 36, 116. 116 plus 25 is 141. And again, I would highly encourage you to use your calculator there. Use your calculator to add 8/3 and 25 over 36. All right, we're almost done. The hard part's done. Now we square root both sides. X minus 5/6. I didn't really need the parentheses. I'm not sure why I wrote them. Equals plus or minus the square root of 141 over 36. X is 5/6 plus or minus square root of 141 over 6, because the square root of 36 is a nice number at 6. So my final answer is 5 plus or minus square root of 141 over 6. All right, so here are your last two homework problems. Homework number 5 and homework number 6. Again, we're solving by completing the square. You're going to have 3x squared minus 9x minus 4 equals 0. And then how about 2x squared plus 5x minus 1 equals 0. Good luck. Let me know if you need help. See you in class.